They say every great change begins long before the world notices. It begins in the mind. Napoleon Hill once said that our only real limitation lies within the way we think. Most people spend their lives waiting for the world to change, not realizing the key has always been inside their own thoughts. George was one of them. For most of his 40 years, he lived as if life were something happening to him, not through him. His days felt predictable, safe, and quietly disappointing. The same alarm every morning, the same traffic lights on the way to work, the same polite conversations that never touched anything real. He had a job that paid the bills, but not a dream that fed his soul. He wasn't miserable, but he wasn't alive either. Somewhere along the way, he had stopped believing that change was possible. Each morning, George drove to work with his coffee cooling in the cup holder, the radio whispering the same tired news. He often wondered if this was all there was, a long line of days that looked exactly the same. He blamed the economy, the city, even luck. But never once did he look inward. Never once did he ask if maybe his own thoughts were creating the walls he couldn't but see. One grey afternoon, while waiting for a bus after his car broke down, he noticed a small bookstore across the street, the kind that smelled of paper and time. He walked in just to escape the rain. The place was quiet, almost sacred. In the back corner, an old man was sitting behind a wooden desk, reading a worn-out copy of a book titled Think and Grow Rich. George smiled slightly and said, "I've heard of that one." The man looked up, his eyes warm and knowing. "Then you've heard of The Secret," he replied. George laughed. "If it's that easy, why isn't everyone rich?" The man closed the book gently and said, "Because most people never change the one thing that matters, their mind." George frowned. "You mean positive thinking?" The man shook his head. "No. Belief. You don't get what you want. You get what you believe." The words lingered in the air like a soft echo. George nodded politely, bought a cheap notebook from the counter and left. But that night, while lying in bed, those words wouldn't leave him alone. He began thinking about all the years he had spent doubting himself, postponing dreams, and expecting the worst. He realized he had been loyal to his fears and a stranger to his potential. It was a quiet, painful realization that the problem had never been the world, but the way he looked at it. The next morning, something inside him felt different. He woke up earlier, opened the window, and just breathed. The air felt cleaner, the sunlight warmer. He decided to try an experiment. For 1 week, he would watch his thoughts. Every time he caught himself complaining, he would stop. Every time he expected failure, he would imagine a better outcome. At first, it felt silly, like pretending. But as the days passed, something began to shift. He started smiling more, even when nothing special happened. He noticed people responding differently, kinder, more open. He realized the world hadn't changed, only his energy had. One morning at work, his boss called him in. Normally, George would have braced for bad news, but this time he entered with calm confidence. To his surprise, his boss offered him the chance to lead a new project, something he'd secretly wanted for years, but never believed he deserved. That night, George walked home instead of taking the train. The city lights seemed alive. Every sound, every color, every face felt connected to something bigger. He thought about the old man and wondered if that encounter had been chance or something more. Napoleon Hill once wrote that when the student is ready, the universe will reveal its teacher. Maybe that was what had happened. Weeks turned into months, and George kept practicing. He stopped feeding the thoughts that drained him. He learned to say thank you more often, even for small things. When challenges came, he didn't curse them. He asked what they were trying to teach. Slowly, the people around him began to change too, not because they were different, but because he saw them differently. The world had become a reflection of his new inner state. One quiet Sunday morning, George returned to that little bookstore. The door was locked, the windows dusty. It looked abandoned, as if it had been closed for years. For a moment he stood there, confused. He could still picture the old man's eyes, the calm in his voice. Maybe he had imagined it. Maybe not. He smiled, turned to leave, and noticed a small piece of paper taped to the door. It said, "When you change your mind, you change your world." He stared at it, feeling a strange warmth in his chest. It was the same lesson written again, just for him. That night, as the city settled into silence, George sat by his window watching the lights fade into the horizon. He thought about the man he used to be, restless, tired, waiting for luck to find him, and he realized that everything had changed the day he decided to think differently. Nothing outside him had shifted overnight. The same city, the same people, the same job, but his thoughts had opened a new dimension of life he had never seen before. He understood now what Napoleon Hill truly meant. That thought is the cause, and reality is the effect. He smiled to himself and whispered, "The day I changed my mind was the day life began to change with me." The sound of those words filled the room with quiet truth. He didn't need to chase anything anymore, not happiness, not success, not love. They were all waiting for him in the stillness of a clear mind. For the first time, he felt free, because he had finally discovered what so many spend their lives searching for. The power to create begins within. If this story made you pause for a moment, share it. Maybe someone out there is still waiting for the world to change, not realizing that everything they seek is already within them. Tell me, what thought are you ready to change today? Because sometimes, a single shift in the mind is all it takes to rewrite the entire story of your life.